Chapter 2 TCS Daunting. The Daunting was a triangular fast attack craft, relatively small, sporting a wingspan of 130 feet. Adapted for both space and atmospheric flight, it was capable of escaping up to 10 Gs of planetary gravity, making the vessel one of the conglomerate's most versatile. A little over 6 years old, the ship's systems had been updated 3 times, but she'd served faithfully in 52 missions. She was docked in parallax station, like most spaceplanes, with her belly facing in the direction of centripetal force to take advantage of the starport's artificial gravity. Knowing he was the earliest of formation eased some of his anxiety as Ramadi took his position in line with the first officer. Then, just as he was about to embarrass himself, he realized that he was following a long-ingrained academy habit. The first to report was always highest rank for the day. In the academy, he was usually first in highest rank, but that definitely was not the same anymore. Catching himself soon enough, Ramadi turned and took a further position away from Rouse. Looking away from the door he entered through, he ignored all of the questions trying to surface from his subconscious. Behind him, the door opened and voices echoed through the cargo bay. "So," I said, "if you want 440 credits to repair this inverter coupling just because of the inertia module, I know you're a cheat," said a man with a Spanish accent. "The module's work is all labor, but that's maybe 10 minutes. "Yes, what did he say then?" Another replied in an accent Ramadi couldn't place. "So he said, okay, show me you can fix that in 10 minutes and you get the whole job free." The commander cleared her throat as if to signal silence. "And how long did it take you?" the other man replied. "Did it in 9 minutes, 40 seconds, man. I'm not—" "Lieutenants!" Rouse chirped sharply. Ramadi looked over. The 2 men engaged in banter snapped to attention as they quickly fell in line. The first was Lieutenant Charlie Guerra, Daunting's chief engineer. A stocky man, he wore a maintenance and repair operations suit, or MRO. Helmet tucked beneath his left arm, Charlie had a welding torch integrated into one forearm of the suit and a riveter unit attached to the other. Charlie's right stood Lieutenant Tyrell Dalton, operations officer. Towering a foot over his crewmate, he wore the standard blue uniform of Conglomerate AstraCorps and a resting face of stone. He spoke in an accent Ramadi guessed was Liberian. "Nope," Dalton replied through the comnet, "Burkina." Ramadi cleared his throat nervously. "Oh no, we got a bleeder?" Charlie jested. "What kind of—" "That's enough chatter," Rouse said. Aside from Ramadi's heartbeat thumping in his ears, the bay was quiet. He focused on calming himself. "Adam, can you help me out?" "Please wait," Adam replied privately. "We can converse later. Officers are reporting in, due in 20 seconds. The door behind him opened again, but instead of a voice or thoughts, Ramadi heard only the march-like pace of a pair of boots. He wondered if it was the captain, then looked over at the officer approaching the formation. A bald man with considerable bionic enhancements visible over his head and neck fell into the first position, the one designated for third in command. Given that more of his head seemed machine than man, he lacked much of any expression except, perhaps, one of melancholy. Ramadi's optic overlay informed him that this otherworldly human was Lieutenant Commander Marcus Kane, Communications and Science Officer. He raised a salute slowly, which First Commander Rouse returned, and then they both put their hands behind their backs with all formality. "Crew assembled," Kane spoke with a metallic timbre. Ramadi felt flush with heat as he realized that, unlike simulations in the academy, he would serve among only 6 crew members. Through his schooling, he and other cadets learned to perform every ship operation so that they had a full appreciation of Atom and its battery of various drones, which had made the need for enlisted crew obsolete. Drones that operated on the interior of ships ranged from the microscopic for medical purposes to those no larger than an insect. The larger ones were typically only used for ship exterior use like hull repair, scouting, messenger probes, and maintenance. Such technology was essential not only to maximize human resources, but to keep starships as small and as efficient as possible. He jolted out of rumination as the cargo bay door opened. "Captain on deck," Rouse said, snapping to full attention with her feet together and arms at her side. With a synchronized clack, everyone shaped up their stance. The sound of light footfalls tapped until a petite, olive-skinned woman came into view. Her black hair was artfully twisted into a single large braid that rested on her shoulder. Her right arm was a bionic replacement of glossy black obsidian. Ramadi had familiarized himself with Captain Gaines' file, how she lost the arm in a recent battle against UniTerra on the frontier. It was the same battle that had claimed the life of the ship's previous tactical officer, Ensign Jaina Thames. Ramadi felt a lump swell in his dry throat as he realized that, though this experience was novel and exciting for him, his presence was a reminder of loss to his crewmates. "At ease. Thank you all for your timeliness." The captain glared playfully at Lieutenant Commander Kane. "Admiralty's given us a mundane mission, so rather than drone on about that, why don't we get to know our reinforcement? Ensign Ramadi Fortuna, welcome aboard. I'm pleased to have such a star of the Academy among my ranks." Ramadi smiled sheepishly. "Let's all spare the ensign the usual jesting and hazing." She eyed Charlie and Terrell. "Let's cut him a little slack." She turned to the commander. "Because none of us loved our transitions from academy to duty. It never goes like the simulations do, and it's never cut and dry. And one other thing you'll never hear from anyone at the academy, Adam doesn't have all the answers." She looked at Fortuna. "Even though it thinks it does. That said, we do have to follow its orders. Adam is what keeps the conglomerate functioning on the frontier. Understood?" "Yes, Captain," Ramadi replied, his voice cracking slightly. Charlie snickered, then caught himself. "Fortuna, now to you," Gaines said softly. "Could you please tell us something brief about yourself? Why did you join AstraCorps when you could have taken a safe job in industry or commerce?" Shaking slightly, Ramadi worked up some saliva in the desert of his mouth before responding. "Yes, ma'am. I always felt that there's too much to see of this universe to be held down to living on just one planet or doing some routine every day. But this decision wasn't just for the sake of travel. That was the least of my concerns. I want to do something with purpose. The spark may have happened when I was young, but its effects are still as important today as they were then. I can help save lives in this war, lives on both sides. I'm sure I sound like every recruit right now. I realize that I'm just an unimportant speck of dust in this universe, but I believe I can be important to the people around me." It was awkwardly quiet for a moment, and Ramadi wondered if he had said something wrong. "We do need you on the ship, Ensign," the captain said. "And you are not nothing. Your fresh eyes will give us a perspective we've missed. On that note, I look forward to your system review reports. Commander Rouse will instruct you further." "Captain." "Now, on to our missions," Gaines said. "Per Admiral Blythe, we are to report directly to Frontier Command under Vice Admiral Banks, who is coordinating our current defensive posture from the Styx system. UniTerra has quieted over the last week, and incursions are down. Intelligence suspects our enemy is decreasing presence because they're engaging in stealth operations and preparing a strike to disrupt our rear supply where the guard is light. Our job is to patrol rear supply lines and look for hostiles and suspicious activity. Questions?" Ramadi thought back to crossing paths with Rear Admiral Blythe. "Not that Blythe, Ensign," the captain said. "My CO is Amanda Blythe, his daughter." Fortuna's face turned beet red. He still didn't understand how everyone could hear his thoughts so easily. "Good then. I'll turn it over to the commander to brief you all on ship duties. Praise Adam." Valeria saluted Captain Gaines firmly, followed by Ramadi and his crewmates, to which the captain responded in kind before turning to leave. "Right," Valeria said. "Once you're dismissed, prepare for departure. You all know your stations, except our new ensign. Weps, you heard the captain about those system reviews. What do you want to start with?" Ramadi hesitated, forgetting that his rating was Weps in shipboard slang. He also had no idea what ship system he wanted to start reviewing. I'll show him engineering," Charlie said. "No," Rouse said, expressionless but angling her Germanic chin toward him like a pointer. "I don't want a greenhorn diving in too fast to every technical detail, but I don't want him on a guided tour either. Ensign, Ops Officer Daunting will coordinate a simple Cartesian 34-point system check with you and Guerra. I trust you are familiar?" "Yes, ma'am, but—" Rouse's mouth opened suddenly in surprise. The other officers shuffled nervously. "Yes, but—" "Lieutenant Daunting, could you please inform our recruit what happens when we say, 'Yes, but'?" "We get thrown out of an airlock, Commander." "That's right," Valeria said. We don an MRO suit first, of course, then we are placed on exterior hull inspection detail. But newbies get one mulligan. I suppose, speaking of newbies, we have a tradition on Daunting. For the first and last launch of any crew member, they are off duty. You may enjoy this reprieve in your quarters. However, as soon as we arrive in the next system, report to engineering. Yes, ma'am. Cartesian system checking engines. Right then. Any questions? A moment of almost complete silence passed. Silent except that Ramadi could just barely sense thoughts emanating from someone in the formation. He didn't recognize the thought voice. Covert protocol. The words were quiet and foggy. Dismissed, Rouse barked. Ramadi felt useless, sitting in his quarters while the rest of the crew did their jobs. He wondered why Daunting had such a tradition, and if the captain thought so highly of him, why ground him to his cabin? System checks completed. Detaching mooring clamps, Adam said. Disengaging traction field. The restraint strapped across his chest somehow made the ship's jarring motions more nauseating than he would expect. His belly gurgled. Anxiously holding his breath, he watched the mooring dock grow more distant through the ship's aft-facing topside camera. Maneuvering thrusters gently fired, pushing her slowly away from the dock. He switched to the keel camera. It relayed a view of the cosmos, spinning nearly unnoticeably slow and cluttered by the passage of various silhouettes crossing the stars outside. A few ships further out were brightly lit by the sun's intense heat and illumination. Ever been through a star relay? Charlie asked. Ramadi's Oni showed the engineer's location as the starboard booster. Why do you guess I haven't? Haven't most people? Hey, relax. It doesn't hurt or anything. I just guessed because you're young and most cadets have only been through a simulation. All I've ever known is Parallax Station in the Academy. Why do you ask? Well, it's different. Hard to simulate the weirds, you know? Well, I do remember it being pretty jarring in the simulation. Going through the relay wipes everything, even signals firing in your brain. Most people write themselves notes, reminders of what just happened, stuff like that. Ensign Fortuna, Adam cut into the conversation. I will now close your camera feed. We are about to pass the starport horizon and the brightness is enough to damage your visual cortex. That is, unless you would like me to apply a sun filter to input. Thank you, Adam. Go ahead and close the feed. So, Charlie said, you have a flip-up board and a mag pen in the right arm of your armchair. Every chair in the ship has them. Bring it up. Ramadi pressed a button on his right chair arm, which caused a long slit to open and a large rectangular board to pop up. A pen attached to the chair arm with a soft tether came out in tandem. He pulled the board up the rest of the way, which then became free from the chair aside from a multi-directional pivot arm. So, here's an example. We're in the Parallax system, and the next stop is the Grim system. Right Parallax to Grim. That'll tell you where we just came from and where we will be. So, follow that logically. What else would you want to know if you lose your short-term memory? Instead of answering Charlie's question, Ramadi replayed a lesson from his Academy Psychology and Neurology class. Professor Kao was a slender, Caucasian Japanese man who always taught with perfect intonation and enunciation, as though he were giving a speech. One would seldom see him dressed in anything besides slacks, a sweater vest, and tie. A stickler for the old ways, he always conducted class in person, pacing to and fro at the front of the auditorium in a rhythmic pattern. Why? He drew out the opening of his question. Do we forget things so quickly after we take in new information? Well, we have not forgotten them. They are simply in a state of transition from our short to medium-term memory, which is very difficult to access. Our God-given neurology says no. I am still processing this. Our Oni says no. I don't have this data accessible yet because it first has to pass through the interpretation process of our brain. But there is an area of our brain that can use very recent information. Can anyone guess what area of the brain that is? The reptilian part, instinct. Ramadi reassociated back to the present and realized he hadn't been paying attention to Charlie, who was saying, "Shot across the freaking galaxy." Okay, Fortuna said. Ensign Fortuna, brace for roll, Adam said. We will rotate to face the ship's belly toward the star, which will reverse the effects of centrifugal force. You may feel dizzy, and then you'll feel a continuous tugging sensation toward the ceiling. Ramadi took a few deep breaths and tensed his abdomen in anticipation. He never got used to the discomfort of a centrifugal flip in simulations. "This is gonna suck the first time," Charlie thought, "but you get used to it quickly." Just as Adam warned him, Ramadi immediately felt dizzy, as though he'd jumped onto a merry-go-round and had no choice but to hang on for dear life. The spinning sensation changed to an intense pull toward the ceiling, like hanging upside down while holding a 50-pound weight. What was worse, the air in his quarters immediately felt hotter. "Adam?" Ramadi tightened his abdomen as he spoke aloud. "What's the temp in here?" Since passing beyond the shadow of Parallax Station, cabin temperature has risen from 76 degrees Fahrenheit to 82. I project that the temperature will keep rising to 106 before we can complete our trip to the relay. Can you turn on some climate control in here?" "Negative. There is so much heat from Parallax that Daunting cannot block or reflect all of it with her underside's thermal shielding." Firing her forward thrusters to slow her approach, Daunting neared the Parallax star relay 500 miles away. A massive umbrella-like mechanism, the relay directly harnessed plasma from the sun beneath to fuel its gravitational projector. White iridescent beams projected from tips of the umbrella, coming together to form a disk of pure white light brilliant enough to outshine even the star. Numerous ships positioned in line between the relay's thermal inductor and the portal, awaiting the final stage of the relay's activation. "We are nearing the Taurus channel of the star relay," Adam said. "I will cut all systems in T-minus 60 seconds. 60. 59. Still struggling against both the rising heat and the centrifugal force pulling him toward the ceiling, Ramadi took time breaths. "After we land, you're with Guerra on engines, Greenie," Dalton said. "On the double, copy?" "Understood." Daunting's rear engines cut, then a counteracting burst of the bow thrusters jerked the entire ship. Ramadi's stomach churned. "Administering anti-nausea drugs," Adam chirped. Ramadi felt a sudden cool rush in his legs that spread gradually through his body, relieving discomfort immediately. "Thank you, Adam." 15. 14. 13, Adam said. Two tug drones, one attached to either side of Daunting's wings, fired their thrusters quickly to position the ship into a conical region with several other vessels. The drones darted away just as the disk of light it projected spun, increased in size, and glowed with an otherworldly prismatic hue. The ring of light stretched into a tube and encompassed the ships in front of it, then compressed into a ray that shot out into the void.